On today's episode of Locked On Mariners, after being the team's biggest strength in 2021, does the Mariners bullpen have an encore in them? We're previewing the relievers, plus we're continuing Flag Week with a pair of players we're high on. All that and more here on Locked On M's. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Tuesday, March 29th, 2022, and this is Locked On Mariners. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marwan Gonzalez, joined as always by my co-host, Colby Patnode. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's DANE, GNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. Be sure to also check out our Patreon, where we talk about the Mariners even more, and also get into some non-baseball talk twice a week. Visit patreon.com/Control Zone for more information on that if you are interested. And if this is your first time joining us here on Locked On Mariners, welcome to the show. If you like what you hear, give us a follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this. We're also now on YouTube, so if you're watching us, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and most importantly, tell your friends. We greatly appreciate it. So let's get into our first topic of the day, our biggest topic of the day, continuing our position by position preview of the 2022 Mariners. We previewed the starting rotation yesterday. Now we're on to the bullpen, which was one of the best units in all of baseball last year. But Colby, bullpens are ultimately volatile. They might be the biggest crapshoot in the entire sport of baseball. And even though that the Mariners unit is pretty much intact, aside from Casey Sadler suffering a season-ending shoulder injury, they've even added guys. Giles, Andres Munoz. They're getting a full year of Diego Castillo. They added Sergio Romo as well. How are you feeling about this bullpen? Obviously, these bullpens are hard to predict, but I'm going to ask you to predict how the bullpen is going to perform anyway.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest thing to do in professional sports, really, at least from what we do, the analytics side of things. But yeah, on paper, the Mariners bullpen is at least as good as it was last year, and probably better. But, again, like you mentioned, these things are incredibly fickle, and the Mariners themselves have had great bullpens that they've brought back the following year, and they've just been bad. I think the 2014 bullpen, they essentially brought that back in 2015, and it was below average after being great. But we know how important bullpens are. They can, literally turn the tides of an entire season. It doesn't seem like it's something that people often ignore, but is critically important. It's the special teams of Major League Baseball. So yeah, the Mariners bullpen is in pretty good shape based on what we know. But ultimately it's a bullpen, so we don't really know much of anything, at least not on a day-to-day basis. So on paper, better, but you know what that paper's worth when we're talking about the bullpen.
Right. So a question we commonly get is, who is going to lead the Mariners in saves? So there's a lot of guys that took on a high leverage role last year. I assume that's going to be the case again this year. It's kind of going to be a by committee situation. You got guys like Paul Sewald. I mentioned Diego Castillo earlier. Drew Steckenrider is still around. How do you feel about the high leverage situation and how Scott Service is going to make that work this year?
I feel like there's certainly going to be a hierarchy. I think for the layman, what this is going to look like is closer by committee. But in reality, what it is, it's going to be Scott Service kind of manipulating his bullpen based on who was available that day to get the best guy, in the biggest leverage spot. Maybe that's the seventh inning, maybe that's the sixth, maybe it is the ninth. So I think you'll see a lot of variations there. My guess is that kind of like the big guy in the highest leverage spot, probably going to be Paul Sewald to start the year. And then probably Castillo is number two. And then I would guess Steckenrider is probably like the third guy. It could be Giles, it could be Munoz eventually, but I think they're going to try and really ease those guys in. And I wouldn't be shocked if there was kind of a hard rule where they're just not going to let Munoz or Giles pitch on back-to-back days for at least the first month or so, assuming they're both healthy enough to make the team, which it seems like they will be. So I think that's kind of the pecking order you're going for. I don't think there's going to be a traditional closer, although somebody may
Mhm.
just end up, collecting the most saves. But I think if you're looking at like who is the actual closer or the fireman out of that bullpen, I think Paul Sewald is the number one right now.
So you mentioned him just a second ago, Ken Giles. They obviously added him on a 2-year deal last year, banging on him being able to come back from Tommy John surgery. He's pitched this spring, has looked, kind of shaky, but that's to be expected with someone coming off of the injury and the surgery that he is. When he's healthy, though, we're talking about one of the best relievers in all of baseball. What are you expecting from Giles this season?
I'm expecting some rough patches, particularly early. There's going to be days where he just won't throw strikes. It's really usually the last thing that comes from Tommy John surgery is the kind of the feel and the command. The stuff almost comes back, right away. And we saw that in his one televised outing this summer or this spring. The slider was really sharp and it was good, and the velocity was 95, 96, right where it needed to be. But the command, particularly the fastball command, he just didn't have a feel for it. And I suspect you're going to see that, here and there throughout the season. But, that's why it was so important for him to not have to be the guy in those high leverage spots. You can kind of pick and choose your spots with him, and the expanded bullpen or the expanded rosters really do help with that, because you don't have to actually run the risk of using him in back-to-back days. I think by the end of the year, he'll look pretty close to what he was before he got hurt. Typically takes about a year and a half before these guys, really start to feel control and command again. And he's at about a year and a half right now from when he originally had the surgery. A little bit less than a year and a half. So I think by June, he should be, more or less back to the old Ken Giles. But I am still expecting some shaky spots here and there. A, because he's a reliever and all relievers have bad outings, and B, because he is coming off the Tommy John. So I wouldn't expect too much right away, but I think it's fair to expect by sometime in June, July, August, the Mariners will have a weapon out of the bullpen they can use in Ken Giles.
Well, and the nice thing is, for now, he's not really in a position where you're having to rely on him too much, right? You have Steckenrider, you have Sewald, you have Castillo, you have these guys in place where Giles is the fourth or fifth guy in the bullpen right now, and that's great, right? Because that's just kind of an addition that or a luxury rather that you're getting hopefully at some point during the season, and it just lengthens that group. It makes you, it puts less pressure on you to maybe run Paul Sewald out there for 3 games in a row or what have you, if you're trying to say sweep the Astros or trying to win a big series or what have you, and just trying to work with the cards that you're being dealt. And that's what Scott Service had to do a lot last year, especially when Sewald was kind of the guy and Steckenrider was kind of the extra guy. And obviously they had Graveman, who missed some time due to COVID. And then when he came back, he was still pretty good, but not as dominant as we had seen him. And obviously they traded him away, and then they got Diego Castillo later on. But Castillo came over and he was dealing with a little bit of a shoulder issue as well. And that seemed to greatly impact him at times. Now he's healthy, and we've seen him a couple times now in spring, and he's looked fantastic. And like we were talking about with Giles, when he's healthy, he's one of the best relievers in baseball. Diego Castillo is the same thing as well. And now the Mariners are getting a full year of him, which, I mean, that's a pretty huge boost to this bullpen, and probably makes up for some of the regression that we might see from Steckenrider, from Sewald, right?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Castillo wasn't 100% healthy at the end of last year. But there were times where he looked healthy, and it was some of the filthiest stuff you'll see out of the bullpen. Castillo is that type of guy. He is a high leverage arm, and getting him for an extra, 3-4 months more than you got him for last year should help. And he can cover multiple roles. He can pitch the 7th. He can come in and get the final out or two in the 6th. He can close games, and you're going to be fine with him in any of those roles, because he's legitimately that good. So hopefully he stays healthy all year. He's past the shoulder stuff, or was it the elbow, whatever it was. But yeah, he's looked very good. So and so is Andres Munoz. I don't know if you saw what he did yesterday, but
yeah,
he's already at 101 and throwing heaters right above the belt. So He's in a pretty good spot.
And that's the thing with this bullpen in general too, is there's a lot of different stuff in this bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be hard for opposing teams to deal with over the course of a night, any given night, really.
Right.
Especially like when you have someone like Sergio Romo coming out and throwing an 84 mile per hour fastball and that slider, and then you throw out Andres Munoz the next inning or what have you. Like that's ridiculous. That's hard to keep up with for any ball club. So
yeah, it just Romo throwing his frisbees up there, and same with Seawald, and then Castillo is kind of a sinker heavy slider guy, ball kind of tails in on righties and kind of buries in on their hands, and and then Munoz is just straight gas. Like the Mariners can have a lot of fun with this, and they're going to be a very tough team to kind of prepare for. Again, all in theory because it's a bullpen, but on paper, yes, they're going to be tough to score runs off of.
All right, so we're going to be talking about how Casey Sadler's injury impacts things and how the back end of the bullpen is going to shake out in just a moment. But real quick, I need to remind you, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I started taking Athletic Greens because I just don't have the time to research every single amazing thing that's going to make my body feel great, and I'm sure neither do you. So what is Athletic Greens? Well, with one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all the things. It also only costs you less than $3 per day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. And for every purchase, Athletic Greens donates to organizations helping to get nutritious food to kids in need, including No Kid Hungry here in the U.S. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's just one scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/MLB network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/MLB network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. You're listening to Locked On Mariners. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day, just like you do here every day. And just a reminder to check out Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts, just like us. So let's continue our discussion here about the Mariners 2022 bullpen. Casey Sadler out for the year with a season-ending shoulder injury. He's going to have surgery on that. Maybe he's already had surgery on that. I'm not too sure about that. But they're going to be without Sadler for the rest of the year. And he really took over for JT Chargois towards the second half of the season when Chargois went to Tampa Bay, and the Castillo deal kind of filled out that role, the fire extinguisher of the bullpen, if you will. I think that's probably a good way to put it for Sadler. They brought in Sergio Romo. We talked about him a little bit earlier. What do you think about Romo kind of filling that Sadler role for the Mariners?
I think it's probably what's most likely to happen. It's probably the role he's best suited for. We know Romo, the pelts are on the wall. He's got the World Series rings. He's accumulated a ton of saves in his career, but that's not who he is anymore. He's not that type of pitcher. So he is probably the guy who comes in, sixth inning, the Mariners are up 3-2, and they got a guy on second, and Mike Trout is at the plate, right? Like you're probably going to Romo unless, they want to go a little higher leverage because it's Trout. But that's pretty much the role. He's going to be Casey Sadler. He's going to be JT Chargois from the first half. And we saw last year how critically important that role is to be able to, take out your starter maybe before you were planning on it, or maybe before you wanted to, and feeling pretty good that you're not going to blow this lead because you have a quality reliever in that spot, without having to tap into the Seawald, Steckenrider, Castillo type of guys. The Mariners will do it sometimes, but I really think they want Sergio Romo to handle this job. A lot of his outings last year were shorter than one inning. So I do think he's going to be the guy who comes in to get 1 or 2 outs, and then he's done for the night. it's the role he's best suited for. He generates a ton of weak contact. He's probably not the guy, like, if you need a strikeout, you're probably rather be going to Seawald or Castillo or somebody like that. But if you just need, to get a quick out here, to get to the 6th or the 7th, Romo's probably going to be the guy.
So for the rest of the bullpen then, because now you got to factor in the fact that rosters are going to expand to 28 guys until May 2nd. So you have extra spots. You have 2 extra spots on the roster. I would assume that's both going to be pitchers. We'll see. We'll see how they want to handle it. But considering how the Mariners have always liked to have a large bullpen, a large selection of arms, I would say that it's a safe bet that we're going to see maybe 10 relievers on this roster to start the season. Probably 9, but I definitely wouldn't rule out 10. So how does the rest of this unit shake out for you then? I know that you put together a 28-man roster projection on our Patreon that folks can go check out if they subscribe. Patreon.com/Control Zone. That link will be in the description if you're watching us on YouTube. It's also in the description wherever you're listening to this, on Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. But yeah, so how do you feel that's going to shake out on the back end? There's a lot of guys: Johan Ramirez, Eric Swanson, Wyatt Mills, Matt Festa. A lot of names to go over here.
Yeah, I feel like Anthony Mashevitz is probably a lock to make this team, even though I don't think he should be, but it sure seems like he is. I would have a hard time imagining that Johan Ramirez doesn't make this roster. He's been very good this spring. He really improved last year. And he might have the best stuff in the bullpen. And we just spent the first segment talking about how stacked and loaded the bullpen is. And Ramirez might have the best raw stuff of any of them. So it's kind of feels like he has to make this team. And then personally, I think that because Matt Brash is going to be the number 5 starter, that's my assumption, they're going to have to carry somebody who's kind of a long guy or somebody who can piggyback off of Brash. There's an outside shot that's George Kirby, but I kind of doubt they go that route. So I'm leaning more towards Justice Sheffield, who's been okay in his spring outings. And you can kind of get him to go 1 or 2 innings once or twice a week and kind of piggyback there. And because of the 28-man roster, you can do that. I think the last spot is probably going to come down to Eric Swanson or maybe Matt Festa. There's a couple other guys, that maybe – some minor league free agent guys who can come in and compete for that spot, but it sure feels like it's between those two. Swanson was pretty good last year. I know he got hit pretty hard yesterday, but
he got toasted. Brad Miller destroyed him, and then Yanni Hernandez I think also got him.
I'm gonna blame the wind for those.
Sure,
I'm just choosing to do that. So it's gonna come down to one of those two. The good news is that Swanson does have an option left, so the Mariners can send him down to Tacoma without any risk of exposing him to waivers. And I do wonder if maybe they do that and stick him in the AAA rotation just to kind of keep him stretched out and kind of used as an emergency guy. Because right now, the Mariners don't have that guy. I mean, I guess next up would probably be Mark Gavagis if he was healthy, but that's kind of a big if. So if any one of the top 4 guys goes down, it's probably Sheffield, and then unless Mark Gavagis is healthy, it might be Swanson next, and that's not great. I just don't think they're going to push Kirby all that hard here early in the year.
Right. All right, so let's move on to our flag player. So, Colby, this was your idea. We did one yesterday, but for those that are tuning in that didn't listen to yesterday's episode, kind of explain what Flag Week is and why we're doing this.
Yes. Yeah, so the idea comes from Christopher Harris, who used to write fantasy football at ESPN, has since moved on, has an independent podcast called Christopher Harris. It's a really good podcast. It's Harris Football. It's a really good podcast. I recommend it if you guys are into fantasy football. But basically, every year he would do this article where he would plant flags on 10 players. And basically, the idea here is that he's staking his claim on this player by planting a flag in him. And it's just, this is a guy that either I think I like more than everybody or that I just really, really like. It's not necessarily like a my guy type of thing, but it's very similar. So like if Ty wants to plant a flag on Julio, like everybody's doing that, but that's fine. Like, it's not supposed to be
Right.
just like deep cuts and you do whatever you want. It's just, this is a player that I really like for this year.
Right.
And it's that simple.
All right. So yesterday, and we're going by the rule that we cannot pick the same player that the other person has. So yesterday I picked Matt Brash. You picked Luis Torrens. I gave you first pick yesterday, so I'll take first pick here, even though that I think we both know who we're taking already. So
we'll see.
well, I think you know who I'm picking at least. So I'm taking Eugenio Suarez, who was brought over in the trade with the Reds that got Jesse Winker, and Suarez has kind of been the forgotten guy, right? He's the add-on. He's the money that helped you get Winker for a lower cost, right? That's how he's being viewed. I think he could actually be useful this year. I think he could actually be legitimately good this year. We're talking about a guy that's just 2 years removed from, I mean, and he still hits a ton of home runs, by the way. But this guy, he can hit for a high average, get on base, slug at a high percentage, all that good stuff, all that stuff that you would love from a third baseman. He does it, right? And he plays with probably fringe average defense, but let's be real about it. Kyle Seager's defense was declining as well over the last couple of years. And his offense was, I mean, he hit a lot of home runs last year, but he didn't hit for a high average. He didn't get on base a ton. Neither did Eugenio Suarez. They were more or less the same player last year. And I think at the very least, this is a push from Seager to Suarez. I think you're going to at least get the same amount of production out of your third base position this year. But I think there's a potential for even better here, because Suarez has just never really been this guy, and there's been a lot of things that have happened to him over the last couple of years. He had to have shoulder surgery after a weird accident in a pool. He got a really gnarly bout with COVID that, according to Jason Churchill of the Baseball Things podcast and Prospect Insider, has said people have told him that the COVID thing really messed Suarez up. And on top of that, he also had to play a new position last year. He had to go from third base to shortstop, which is absolutely unheard of. You never hear of guys. You hear of guys going from shortstop to third, shortstop to second, but you never hear of guys going from third to shortstop. And it did not go well for him whatsoever. It was terrible. He was awful out there. They finally moved him back to third in early May, and that's when the offense started to click a little bit better for him. He was still not great, and the strikeouts have gone up over the last couple of years, and that's kind of been a steady thing for him. But in the month of September and the few games that he played in October, he was quite literally the best hitter in baseball by WRC. Like he what did he slug? It was like something over 800. Yeah, like it was ridiculous, the kinds of numbers that he was able to put together last year in the latter half. I think just being able to be further removed from the surgery, being further removed from the effects of his COVID diagnosis and all that, I think that's going to help him. Getting back to third base and knowing that he's going to stick at third base and maybe DH some, I think that's going to help him. I think that's going to put more value in the bat. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think that he's going to, I don't have any delusions of him hitting 50 plus home runs again. Like, don't get me wrong here, but I think he could hit at least 30 plus this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if he hit 250, got on base at like 330, 340, and, slug, for a high slugging percentage and hit 30, 35 home runs this year. I would not be surprised at all. So who's your guy?
Yeah. I'm going to go with Abraham Toro, old Honest Bull. He was pretty darn good when he came over from Seattle last year, particularly in August. He was kind of carrying the offense for a little while with Ty France and Luis Torrens. But this is a guy who you watch play, and he's not, there's nothing super like fun about his profile. He doesn't have plus power. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He doesn't have, just rocket for an arm. But what he does is he makes a lot of contact and he gets a lot of hits. He also gets on base and he's an above average runner. There is some power in the bat. So I kind of look at a guy like Abraham Toro and I go, this guy we might look up at the end of the year and Abraham Toro's hitting like 280. And we're wondering, how can we get him more at bats? because
Right.
he's got that kind of contact profile. He's going to hit for a pretty good average. He has a pretty high floor, as is. He's going to move around some. He's going to have to play some second. He's going to play some third. He got into the game in left field the other day, so we'll see how often they try to do that. He's going to DH some as well. But I think Toro's a guy who could get 450 plate appearances this year, hit 280, and we're going into next year thinking, can we get this guy in our everyday lineup? Can he be a 6-day-a-week type of player? I think that's the kind of year we're about to see from Abraham Toro. I think something in the 270, 340, 400, 420 range. I think that's totally realistic, and there is a little bit more there in the power department. So 400 plate appearances, maybe 12 home runs, something like that. And he's a pretty good base runner also. So he's just a good, solid player to have off the bench. Marwan Gonzalez is a pretty common comp there, and you can certainly see why. There are quite a few similarities.
And the Mariners apparently like him to Ben Zobrist, one of our favorites. So, yeah, that would be nice. I always wanted Ben Zobrist on the Mariners. Really wanted him in 2014.
Same. Absolutely.
So me picking Suarez and you picking Toro actually kind of creates a fun little discussion here because, hey, let's say that Suarez comes out slow again. When is the point for you that you're swapping out Suarez for Toro full time at third base? Because Toro looks about maybe above average defensively there.
Yes, that day is today. It's going to be at least 6 weeks. At the very least. Because the one thing that you don't want to do is you want Suarez's bat in the lineup because your lineup is kind of it's kind
lacking
of
power.
Yes, you need some thump there, and Toro's not that guy. And while do you think Toro has some pop when you're talking about an infield of Ty France, Adam Frazier, J.P. Crawford, and Abraham Toro? That's not a lot of thump there. I mean, Ty France has never hit 20 home runs before, so there needs to be more power there. So I'm giving him at least 6 weeks. And like you said, he doesn't have to be the 49 home run guy. If he's even just like 230 with average on base skills, fringe average on base skills, he's going to be deserving to play pretty much every day. And that doesn't mean you won't DH him some days. That doesn't mean you won't, just bench him in favor of Toro a few days. But you also want that DH spot to remain open because right now all of your power is going to be coming from your outfield. And you have 4 outfielders that you're trying to get at bats for on a pretty much a daily basis. So you need that DH to be available. So yes, it's to me, because Toro can play a little bit of second, he could play a little bit of third. He could probably fake it at first base. He probably will at some point. And hopefully he can play a little bit of left field. I think it's just easier to get him in the lineup without clogging the DH because you do need Suarez's power, even if he's a below average overall hitter. You still need that clout in the middle.
For sure. Yeah, you want to be able to do damage, and you lost quite a bit of potential to do damage with Kyle Seager eventually, having his option declined and then retiring. So, like I said, at the very least, I think you're making up for the loss of Seager with Suarez, and you have the potential to get better there as well. So, yeah, I'm pretty high on Suarez. I know a lot of folks, they're kind of just overlooking him right now, just kind of balling it up, throwing him in the recycling bin. I don't think we should be doing that. Plus, the guy has a fantastic personality, and don't we want him to be hitting, for 250, 260, and after every game saying good vibes only and all that stuff? Don't you want that guy in the clubhouse? He sounds just awesome. He sounds like a great time and just an absolute amazing fit for an already incredibly fun clubhouse. So I hope that he's here for the duration of the season. And if he is, that means that he's probably hitting pretty well and probably playing pretty well. So that would be a lot of fun. And on that note, that is going to do it for our first episode here on YouTube. Or if you're just listening to us regularly, this is just another, it's just another Tuesday for you. But Thank you so much for joining us here on Locked On Mariners. For Colby Patnode, I'm Tidy Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's DANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen of the day, just like you do here every day. Now make your second listen of the day Locked On MLB, where Paul Francis Sullivan, and please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the Major League's present and past. It's free wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. So have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we will see you tomorrow. Peace.